Throughout the years since his debut in 1938, on-screen representations of Superman have varied pretty substantially. And if we're being honest, the on-page representations have varied a little bit as well. But the core character of who Superman is and what he stands for has varied very little, if at all. And the heart of on-screen Superman began with animation. And it certainly feels like My Adventures with Superman carries on both legacies, in the best of ways already. I'm Dan Umpton, and this is the Doomcast. Alright, so first off, do me a favor, hit subscribe and the bell. I make about one of these videos a week. They're all great, so please don't miss even one. Anyhow, in 1940, the ailing Fleischer Studios, which made incredible technological leaps in animation starting in 1916, took on the project of animating a Superman cartoon with scripts in the vein of the popular Adventures of Superman radio serials. Now, I absolutely am going to do a full video on the Fleischer Studios shorts as well after this, but suffice it to say that the gallant, benevolent Superman fighting fantastic, technologically advanced menaces was unheard of in animation at the time. Nobody was doing sci-fi quite the way they were about to do it. The look and the animation style strongly influenced Bruce Timm and the creative teams behind Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series over 50 years later. And by extension, that also influenced the rest of DC's animated universe for more than 20 years. My Adventures with Superman draws on some of the same inspiration, and from the get-go harkens back to and pays tribute to the Fleischer cartoons which predated it, as well as adopting modern anime conventions. It's something of a Supermanime. But in a substantial turn from the current feel of popular live action, this shifts from a stoic and square-jawed Superman, a darker and grittier Superman, so to speak, to a more compassionate Superman, a traditional Superman. A truly impressive element of this show is that the character of Clark and Kal-El are not distinguished from one another, at least not in these first few episodes. This is a Superman learning his own origins and powers as we get to learn them, and so the current clumsiness and awkwardness of Clark Kent feels less so much an act and more of his real character trying to live in a fully human world. The first two-parter episodes, Adventures of a Normal Man, draw directly on the Fleischer Mechanical Monsters episode from 1941. Lois leads new interns Jimmy and Clark on a goose chase for giant military robots under Metropolis, which turns out to not be so much of a goose chase and leads them to an undercover criminal organization run by Livewire, Leslie Willis. It's only when Clark is forced to choose the safety of his new friends over his own potential safety that you see that shift into the character of Superman with a cool confidence and nearly godlike power. But even as Clark, he's not too busy to save a cat, a tree, or fix appliances for an old lady. In fact, he's unable not to do stuff like that. The fundamentals of your core Action Comics characters and supporting cast are present maybe more vividly than they have been in other live-action media or other recent animation. The excitable, accident-prone Jimmy Olson, the intrepid and very headstrong journalist Lois, the gruff and demanding Perry White, even the obnoxious Cat Grant, and the arrogant Steve Lombard are present in exactly the form that you would expect them to be from a comic page. And no, they don't quite look the same that they do in comics, but the characters are there. Now, keen eyes are going to notice little nods here and there to comic pages as well. Amazotech, Wade's Coffee, Bogdanov's Diner, tiny nods that the Timmverse often did as well. There was at one point an intersection of Gardner and Fox. But the choices for initial rogues are some of the best that they could be making, in my opinion. Too often, Superman adaptations open with Lex Luthor, sometimes Doomsday and Darkseid, but the choices of Livewire and Silver Banshee as initial antagonists, linked with uncharacteristically cutie pie Deathstroke, and then Amanda Waller, I'm pretty sure that's Amanda Waller in the background, are great dives into an undersung rogues gallery, even if Deathstroke really isn't a Superman villain. This is exactly the kind of Superman that I think I've missed in live action and other media recently. Compassion for compassion's sake. Maybe the most unrelatable and impossible to imagine power that Superman has is transcendent benevolence. While I enjoy things like Injustice and The Boys and the Snyder vision of Henry Cavill as Superman, who really looked the part more than anyone else has, maybe since Christopher Reeves, it's relieving to see that uplifting and inspiring aspect of Superman on screen again. The one that demonstrates unconditional love. And of course you get people who are incredibly upset about the choices to make Jimmy and Perry black and Lois mixed. Their essential character, however, is pitch perfect, and their race isn't central to the character at all. What about Superman, though? What if you made him black? What about him? There's at least 2 black versions of him in alternate dimensions that I can think of, and a main continuity Chinese Superman. Their characters aren't different either. If you're upset that it's a woke Superman, what does that even mean? What does a woke Superman mean? A super compassionate, hypernaturally benevolent being? They decided that they would include non-white characters? Is that what's woke? To be inclusive? Yeah, okay, good, we agree. If you can explain why that's a bad thing in a way that doesn't somehow circle back to replacement theory, or I don't like it because the originals were white, then just recognize that your criticism isn't objective, but just an opinion. And I'm not calling you racist, you're entitled to your opinion, but it's not one that the Superman created by the 2 Jewish men from Canada would have shared. The world's going to change around Superman. But the core of the character of unconditional love and compassion from a place of absolute strength cannot change, and the world needs more of it. Thanks a lot for watching. Take care, we'll see you next week.